You see this guy right here? This is Cedric Doumbé. And recently, he sold out an entire arena in less than 20 minutes. This superstar was originally supposed to be a fighter for the UFC, but their carelessness lost him one of their best prospects. Doumbé would later become a household name for the UFC's #1 competitor, the PFL. But how did this even happen? Is this the biggest mistake the UFC has ever made? Let's dive in. Cedric Doumbé was born in Douala, Cameroon in 1992. At the age of 9, his family moved to France for a better life. As a teenager, he discovered his passion for kickboxing and began training with professionals throughout Europe. He eventually began his pro career in 2013 and found early success. As he continued to win various tournaments around Europe, the premier kickboxing organization, Glory, took notice of Cedric's talent. He made his debut in 2015, and over the next 6 years, he captured the Glory belt, not once, but twice. To put this into context, MMA superstar Israel Adesanya, who is also a great kickboxer, has never even won a Glory belt. This goes to show that only the best of the best kickboxers get this achievement. Cedric also displayed an unusual approach for most kickboxers, using various styles to KO and defeat his opponents. Cedric was able to fight both in the pocket and from the outside, utilizing insane footwork and movement. This made Cedric a tricky foe for his opposition. On top of all of this, the one thing which makes Cedric stand out from every other high-level fighter is his lack of a coach.
Yeah, I don't have a trainer in kickboxing.
What?
Yeah, that's right.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
People doesn't believe me when I say that, but
You train yourself?
I train myself.
That's insane.
Although he had coaches in the past, for most of his Glory reign, he only had a pad holder and a strength and conditioning coach. On October 3rd, 2021, Cedric announced his retirement from kickboxing and his transition to MMA. Prior to this announcement, Cedric had already been training grappling for 2 years, which shows he was already preparing to transition. MMA as a sport was much larger and more lucrative compared to kickboxing. He had his first 2 fights in the Super Combat Fighting Championship, where he won both fights by TKO. This caught the eye of the UFC, and they ended up signing him for UFC Paris on September 3rd, 2022. They scheduled him to fight Darian Weeks, but the fight never took place. So, what exactly happened? Well, you see, there's actually a few reasons. Despite the UFC being a well-established and professional organization, the way they handled the situation with Doumbé was sloppy and careless. For one, they should have made sure the French Commission would allow the fight in the first place. What's the point of announcing and booking a fight that was never allowed to happen? The UFC is usually on top of their game, but this time around they were unprofessional when it came to the situation. Until 2020, MMA was a banned sport in France. The previous ministers of sports viewed MMA as a violent and rowdy sport. Because France was so new to the MMA scene, their commissions were relatively new at their job. At the time, Cedric only had 2 professional MMA bouts, while his opponent Weeks had at least 5. The French Commission decided that they wouldn't sanction this fight because of Cedric's lack of experience, which actually makes no sense given his over 75 professional kickboxing bouts. Secondly, prior to Doumbé's UFC debut, he discovered a brain bleed through an MRI scan, leading the UFC to cancel his fight. However, Doumbé later discovered that the diagnosis was false. After second opinions from multiple other doctors revealed the diagnosis was likely inaccurate. Despite this, the UFC never showed too much interest in rebooking Doumbé. In addition to all these issues, the UFC also strangely never gave Doumbé the respect and support they usually do to fighters of the same caliber. Alex Pereira was also a former Glory champion who found success in MMA. For Pereira, they pushed him to the top, giving him a title shot in only 3 fights. They also gave him favorable matchups along the way. You could say that Pereira had Dana White privilege. You would expect to see the same potential in Doumbé, but the UFC didn't. Cedric was eventually released from the UFC and left as a free agent. Although Cedric was no longer with a premier MMA organization, he still knew he had a future in MMA. He didn't just want to sit around waiting for his next opportunity idly. Cedric took up 2 more MMA fights, and soon after, the PFL made an offer so good, Doumbé couldn't say no. According to Cedric, the PFL offered him 10 times more than the UFC. This was a no-brainer, and he gladly accepted. Cedric was set to make his PFL debut on September 30th against undefeated Jordan Zebo. Zebo trains out of the MMA Factory, which has produced fighters such as Francis Ngannou and Cyril Gane. Leading up to the fight, Cedric talked a big game. Cedric was confident he would knock out Zebo in the first round.
Jordan, you dead, man.
On fight night, Cedric had an eclectic walkout, showing off his star power. The whole crowd was excited and ready to see the best in action. As the fight began, Zebo threw a high kick which got caught, getting him knocked out in less than 10 seconds.
In the black, Jordan Zebo in the gray. Southpaw stance for Zebo.
Is that low stance from Cedric? Oh!
Are you kidding me?
And just like that, a star is born. Even football superstar Mbappe was left speechless.
Wow!
I think we may have a new record, gentlemen.
Wow!
In past examples, fight fans generally like when fighters can talk the talk and back it up. A prime example of this was when Conor McGregor was on his come up. He would talk big, but actually back it up when he went on to be the biggest star in combat sports. The same can be said for Doumbé. Doumbé also has all the makings and traits to be a superstar. Cedric is a funny guy who is good on the mic, has a flashy fighting style,
Is that a knockdown? No, says Paul Nichols. Right back on the fire. Goes Doumbé. Oh, he's has just put the champ.
and shows his greatness through both his actions and words. For his upcoming match against undefeated Baki, Cedric sold out 20,000 seats in under 20 minutes. Many fighters in the UFC would have trouble pulling that off.
Is it in fact true that tickets are sold out?
Yeah, everything. 20
Wow.
minutes.
20 minutes.
20 minutes after I announced the fight. Even nobody knows about the other fight in the fight card.
Yeah, just
That's
one
crazy.
fight announced. Just one fight
Yeah,
announced.
Just one fight.
He's showing the same potential that McGregor had in his come up. He is quickly becoming the face of the PFL, which is one of the UFC's biggest competitors. It's crazy to think that the UFC really had this guy signed and they let him go without even letting him fight. On top of this, they really tried to lowball such a talented fighter with a decorated background in kickboxing. The money was most likely another big factor into why Cedric doesn't want to join the UFC. As Cedric fights more and more, people are beginning to see the mistake the UFC has made. Many fight fans feel that since the departure of Conor and Khabib, the amount of actual superstars in MMA has gone down. The UFC really could have used someone like Doumbé and turned him into a superstar. Instead, they fumbled one of the best fighters out there and probably won't get him back. Cedric has even stated on the MMA Hour that they fucked up.
That makes me smile because they fucked up. They fucked up, but I didn't lose anything. They lost, so it is what it is. Everything happened for a reason, so it is what it is.
And he most likely doesn't see himself going to the UFC ever again. Do you think the UFC fumbled on this one? Let us know below, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.